Politics is a dirty game. That's what everyone is fond of saying, and more so politicians tell us that. I do not know whether it is a ploy invented from them to keep we the citizens out of politics. But some people have a different take. If politics is bad, the answer to bad politics is good politics, not no politics. This is what our guest Dr. Jayprakash Narayan from Andhra Pradesh preaches and practices in Prudent Gazali today. I have this pleasure, I take this privilege to welcome Dr. Jayprakash Narayan, a renowned youth icon for India. Sir, you have been a physician by training, a doctor, a topper in the IAS exams, a former member of the National Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India, a founder of citizen-centric Lok Satta party, a MLA in Andhra Pradesh. Indeed, you have worn many hats. Which is the best hat that you liked and why?
That of a citizen more than anything else.
Why, sir? Sir, when you talk of a citizen, like it's all right in theory that citizens are worshipped as heroes, but aren't we zeros of the democracy?
Not necessarily.
I mean, you have been an insider in the governance. What tempts you to wear the hat of a citizen?
I've always believed, even when I was in public office, like a district magistrate or a secretary to government or in any other capacity, that a citizen is ultimately the sovereign. The people are endowed with sovereignty, and ultimately the elected public servants or the appointed public servants, they serve the citizen. Somehow in this country that perspective is not adequately institutionalized, and that's what we should do. You know, we must first discover our own capacity to change things. The notion that we are helpless, we are victims is not a very correct notion. Collective informed
Are you trying to say that a common citizen can make more wonders than an IAS officer?
I am not saying a single citizen can make wonders, but what I am saying is collective informed assertion. These are the three critical expressions. It must be collective. We must know how to work together, transcending caste, region, religion, language, etc. It must be informed. It can't be merely an angry outburst. It must be based on some knowledge and understanding and depth and clarity. And it must be democratic assertion, not rabble-rousing, not violence, not obstruction, but in a democratic way we must be able to assert. Once you do that, your power is quite considerable. And oftentimes in our country, we have not been enabled to discover that power. And I think if we discover that, citizenship is about the most glorious thing, because you're free to do what you want. There is no burden on you. You do it out of volition. You know, as Margaret Mead said once, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, that's the only thing that ever did. It's always a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens that changes the world. And in India too, we have to discover that capacity, but in a responsible way. Therefore, I enjoy citizenship more than anything else without a formal office.
Doctor, you are IAS officer. I mean, did you feel it was a hurdle being in the administrative service? It was so rotten that nothing could be done.
No,
so
not
you
at
felt
all.
like quitting and you came out?
Not at all. I enjoyed my stint in government hugely. I'm very highly respected even today in places where I served 25, 26 years later.
Yeah, that's why we are surprised, sir.
Hundreds of thousands of people remember me very fondly. And I examined the contours of power and transcended the ordinary barriers in most cases up to a point. So it's not that I did not have a satisfactory career in public service. But what I realized is that no matter what your placement is.
Despite having power, you felt powerless over there in the corridors of power?
See, it doesn't matter if you are merely a collector, but even if you are a chief minister or a prime minister or a member of parliament or legislator or a minister, in a well-functioning system, on a scale of 100, you must at least get 80 or 90 results. In India, we have created so many constraints on good behavior of those in public office that the outstanding among us can deliver only 15 or 20. If somebody is particularly good.
It appears to have become a pattern. Aruna Rai quits, Arvind Kejriwal quits, you quit. Why can't people remain in the services, reform it from within? Is it something an impossibility?
We require both. We require good people in government, and there are many good people in government in various branches of government who are doing their best. We also require some people who understand what exactly is wrong with the system and how to set it right in a systematic manner. And that is not the function of a bureaucrat. A bureaucrat is to work within the constraints of the system and deliver. He is a manager. Whereas a social reformer or a political reformer or a leader, the job is to actually transcend these constraints mobilize public opinion and institutionally change things. So these two are supplementary. They are not really at war with each other. We require outstanding people in judiciary, in bureaucracy, in politics to serve. We also require outstanding people who understand where the future lies to try and mobilize public opinion and change things.
What is happening, sir? We have a lack of outstanding people in the services, judiciary or in politics, or is it that we lack something as citizens? Something we have become important citizens?
At both levels there are some problems. Look at those in government, for instance, whether it's bureaucracy or judiciary or politics. We do have some good people. For instance, take the IAS. It's a vast examination from all over the country with great aspiration and idealism. Hundreds of thousands of young people take part in the examination. And through a rigorous process of selection, a few hundred are selected. But within a few years, 10, 15
Sir,
years.
ask a common man to name 10 best IAS officers of India. I'm sure they won't be able to count 5.
No, what's happening is, within a few years, we are making monkeys out of them. In other words, we are taking the finest material, and yet we have not created an incentive structure where the good behavior is rewarded, and therefore, after some time, very few people retain the 3 vital qualities in public service: competence, integrity, and commitment. If you judge by those standards after 10 years or so, very few really remain. And that's not because these people are bad. That's because we haven't really created an incentive structure and a system where the best can actually flourish. And therefore, what happens is human beings are fundamentally lazy. And if really you don't measure the capacity of a person to deliver and then reward them and honor them, after some time most people tend to take the easy path. Some people actually become corrupt, and many people lose the commitment to public service.
Yes, sir. The only incentive that seems to work is when they get the bribes. Now, you believe in an ideology where you say that it should be possible for a common citizen to get government services without paying any bribes to the government, to the politicians, or to the
any public
office. Are you daydreaming really?
No, not at all. In any public office, money can never be an adequate reward. Barack Obama is the President of the United States. If he measures himself only in terms of the monetary rewards, he can never become comparable to many chief executives or high-priced lawyers or doctors in the United States. That's the nature of power. Power is not about money. Yes, you require enough to survive with dignity. But beyond that, the moment you think of power as an opportunity to make money, that's a disaster for any society.
Sir, a politicians would look at it slightly different way. They will say that we not only have to survive with dignity, but if we have to survive in politics, we have to buy the votes. So we have to make money.
That is my argument. No, that's my argument. Therefore, our challenge is how do you design a system where the best and the brightest can be elected without abnormal and unaccounted money power.
Yes, you have been saying that. You have been advocating it is not merely periodical change of the players, but you have to change the rules of the games.
Absolutely.
I come to that. How do we change the rules of the game?
It's a variety of instruments. For instance, you asked about can really corruption be curbed. Let me give you some classic instances in our own country. We don't have to go far. 20 years ago, not too long ago, if you or I wanted a telephone, you had to pay 8,000 rupees officially for the Own Your Telephone scheme under that scheme. And in those days, 8,000 rupees was equal to some 1 lakh rupees or so today. Wait for 2-3 years. And if you are lucky and you got the telephone connection sanctioned, then you had to pay a bribe to install the telephone in your house. And if you shifted residence, and if you are lucky again in the same exchange area, otherwise again you have to go through a process of queuing. Then you have to pay another bribe to shift the telephone. And if the phone is out of order, and in those days about 15 days in a month the phones were out of order, to rectify it again you had to pay a bribe. Today we have almost 1 billion telephones in this country.
True, sir, because you have abundance of telephones today.
Not one person today had to pay a bribe to get telephone installed.
But that is because you have abundance of telephones today. Now, do you visualize a society where there will be abundance of everything?
No, that's the point.
So there will be no need to pay bribe.
That's the point.
Our problem is because there is no abundance, because the resources are less.
In other words,
and in getting them you have to pay the bribe.
No, it's not so much resources. It's about governmental power and governmental rationing. The moment there is a shortage in the disbursal of governmental patronage, the moment there is a monopoly, the moment there is no competition, there is no choice, then corruption becomes monumental. So that is one way. The moment you have simply allowed competition to come in, even 20 years ago you could have had telephones without bribery. But we chose not to do. We had a license Raj where everybody had to pay a bribe to get something done. Similarly, if you wanted cement in those days, there used to be for some time only controlled cement. Later on there was dual pricing of cement. And I have seen in front of my office many people like you or me, people with dignity, education, a decent income, etc., had to queue up in front of an office to get a permit for 100 bags of cement to buy with their own money in order to repair their homes. It's an insult to our country. Once we remove that licensing, people are free now. Similarly, take railway reservations. There used to be a lot of bribery. Today,
Let us come to the coal scam, sir. If this permit or licensing system was not there, would that be the end of the bribery?
that's not an answer to everything, but in substantial measure, if natural resources, whether it's iron ore or coal or something is there, if it's no discretionary allocation, if there is genuine competition and competitive bidding, if the state got a decent revenue out of it, at the same time there's incentive for a good investor, good entrepreneur to actually do well and compete successfully, then corruption would have come down considerably. We chose not to do that. 2G spectrum or coal scam are essentially the result of discretionary allocation of precious natural resources.
So, would you say our problems are too many laws, too many controls, no freedom to the entrepreneurs?
Unquestionably, that's one of the key challenges. Wherever the government has actually liberalized, removed this control license Raj, removed this discretion, corruption has come down. Wherever the government could not or would not liberalize, in some areas you cannot liberalize. Judiciary, how can you create competition? Police, how can you create competition except by creating private armies and gundas? You cannot. Yes. State monopoly is necessary. So in some cases, monopoly cannot be taken out. In some places, they chose not to take it out. For instance, there is no reason why in coal allocation or iron ore allocation, there must be monopolies. Yes. So-called first come, first served is a bogus system. Yes. So wherever the monopolies remain, corruption is now monumental. We must understand why corruption is flourishing. Some people think because of liberalization, corruption has gone up. It's not true. Because of non-liberalization, corruption is going up. Wherever there is true liberalization, there is no corruption. Wherever there is competition and choice, there is no corruption. Wherever there is no competition, no choice, licensing and control and discretion are still prevailing, so then there is corruption.
Would you not agree that we, at least in India, we seem to be born with a mindset for corruption? We even try to tempt God with Prasad.
No, I don't agree. See, people of India are in no way inferior to people anywhere in the world. Let's not debunk ourselves.
And yet we have 10 times more corruption.
No, I don't agree. See, we tend to self-flagellate. There is a lot of corruption, but the point I'm making is we haven't built enough institutions to curb it. Let me give you one illustration. Some about 120 years ago or so, a member of parliament in Britain wrote a letter to his constituents. It is still preserved in the British archives.
No, because every time we read those Transparency International findings and all that, we seem to get it how bad we are. Or no, are those findings biased? Are they untrue?
No, they are not biased. We view this from the prism of history. We view this casually as a frozen shot. In reality, there is a motion picture. But go back and have a historical perspective. 120 years ago, a member of parliament wrote to his constituents a letter, a public letter. And those were the days of so-called rotten boroughs, when the MP would be auctioned. There would be actually a formal auction, informal auction obviously, and then money would be distributed for a limited electorate, etc. So this member of parliament, he wrote, saying that you know and I know that I bought your constituency for £5,000 sterling. You do not know that I know that I will not be your next MP, because you already sold that constituency to another gentleman for £8,000 sterling. And then he went on to add, but what you should know is that I have already bought another constituency for £3,000 sterling. And therefore, both of us benefited. You are now getting £3,000 more by selling that seat, and I am now buying another seat at £2,000 less. This is a real letter. Then came Gladstone, a great liberal who understood the malaise in British political system. And he completely restructured British political system. By the time he left office in 1892, the foundations of Great Britain were laid, the modern Britain were laid. So every country went through this. We had the machine politics in New York and Philadelphia and Chicago, etc., until 1920s and 30s in the United States.